I apologize for being a couple minutes late here. One off-topic comment. Later today, we'll be departing on my first international economic mission to Germany and then to Israel. These are two of our state's most important economic partners, combining for roughly $9 billion in annual economic activity. And direct investment by both German and Israeli companies employs literally tens of thousands of our residents. These are numbers that I not only want to see grow, but we believe can grow meaningfully. And from the work we'll be undertaking, I hope we can make them grow. But I wanted clearly to come before you to make a couple of comments and to answer your questions before I leave our state, especially given Kate's very good reporting, as painful as it was to read from the Wall Street Journal that hit the wires last night. Couple of things. Neither Tammy nor I were aware of the specific nature of these allegations until October 2nd. Let me be absolutely and unequivocally clear. This should never have happened. In this instance, the hiring process of the transition did not reflect our values or the seriousness with which we believe allegations of assault should be taken, period. Sexual misconduct in any form is and will continue to be treated by this administration with the utmost gravity. Now we must lead and prove that commitment. Words are not enough. Now, to the best of our knowledge, we are confident that this allegation was handled appropriately once it was brought to my administration in March of this year. So this is not transition, I'm now talking about in government. And that current policies and procedures were properly and promptly followed and adhered to. But that is no longer enough. Let me be unequivocal on that statement as well. That is no longer enough. All of us in public life have a responsibility to lead by example in creating a culture of respect where victims can feel empowered to step forward with their stories and to know their stories will be believed and appropriately handled. I am proud, on the one hand, of the open door policy this administration has, which allows anyone to come forward confidentially, and that's an important word to underscore, confidentially. I am committed to engendering a culture where anyone feels comfortable at any time to step forward without shame or prejudice. I am committed to bringing about deep and meaningful change. Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver stands beside me in these passions and commitments. Tammy and I will speak to Katie Brennan, I believe, this afternoon at 3 o'clock. We tried to connect this morning, it did not work. We will express to Katie personally our profound heartbreak for what she has and is going through, or has gone through and is going through, and we will sit with her soon face to face for a fuller conversation. Sheila Oliver will also reach out to Katie. Tammy and I admire Katie's bravery, and it's critical that we learn from her experience. For her and all women across New Jersey, we must ensure that the system works. Now, here's what that means. First, we are going to demand real accountability and conduct a real and exhaustive independent investigation into how this hire was allowed to go forward in transition. This will be conducted by Peter Venero of Sills, Cummis, and Gross. Peter is a former gubernatorial chief of staff, chief counsel, attorney general, and state Supreme Court justice. The investigation will be specific as to this situation, but it would also encompass a systemic review of hiring and vetting in our transition. We will not follow the lead of Washington. This will be a real investigation designed to uncover the truth of what happened wherever it leads. We're not playing politics. We owe the people of New Jersey transparency, and that's exactly what we'll provide. I spoke with Peter this morning and thanked him for doing this and promised him complete independence and access, period. Secondly, I have asked Mamta Patel, the director of the statewide Division of Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action within the Civil Service Commission, to review all state policies and procedures regarding the handling of allegations of sexual misconduct, to determine whether there are ways to improve our system and to recommend any such improvements. And again, I want to loop back to something I said earlier. based on what I now know, we handle this within the government context appropriately. I don't think that the rules of the road that guide that are sufficient. Mamta's a 25-year veteran of state government. She's been in this position for many years. She's a former deputy attorney general in our state. New Jersey is viewed to have among the better EEO and affirmative action laws in the country, but they're not good enough. They must be even better. Thirdly, I have asked the Attorney General to lead a comprehensive evaluation at the way that these cases are handled by law enforcement, to change the balance so that victims are taken seriously and justice may be more easily achieved. Whether that is by asking the legislature to do something like extend the statute of limitations, or new procedures or training by which prosecutors or law enforcement investigate and take action against allegations of sexual misconduct and assault. This will be looked at from every angle. Again, I want to give Kate a shout out because she, in her article that hit last night, looked at models that we're going to look very seriously at, places like Maryland and Illinois, or even Alaska and other places like that. Survivors of sexual misconduct who have stepped forward and into the light deserve our support for their bravery. It was just a week or so ago when we saw what happens when those in power conduct sham investigations, when they mock victims and they avoid accountability. That will not happen on our watch. I want New Jersey to be nothing less than the gold standard whereby victims of sexual assault or a crime of any sort are encouraged, they're supported, and they're believed. I'm going to give my wife a shout out, I remain as in awe of Tammy's bravery for telling her story of a sexual assault this past January as I do Katie Brennan for telling hers. The many women all across our nation who have decided over the recent weeks and months that they will be silent no longer will be our inspiration for change, as they must be. This administration stands with them and the generations of girls and women like our little Emma who are yet to come. And we will redouble our commitment to not only ensure justice, but make sure New Jersey is not in the pack, but is a leader. With that, I will take your questions. Kate, I think I'm going to, as a courtesy, given you wrote this, I'll begin with you if you've got one.
Thank you.
Can I buy a water from you, Brady? Thank you.
Given that high-ranking members of your administration were aware of Ms. Brennan's accusation, or that there was an accusation made dating back to the transition, do you wish you had been informed sooner?
I wish we hadn't made the hire in transition, period. I'm sick to my stomach once I heard what happened, obviously. Here's a little bit of a dilemma here. Again, this hire should not have happened, so that's the main wish I have. But these processes within government, at least, are confidential. They're treated confidentially, and that's for a reason, to make sure that there's a fairness associated with it, that you're not even inadvertently putting your hand on the scale. And I believe in this case it obviously was followed because we did not hear about it until October 2nd. The big sickness that I have is that this ever happened to Katie, and that we made a big mistake in the transition and hiring, which is what I'm asking Peter to look into.
You're making a distinction between what was done in the transition versus the administration, and a lot of the people were the same. That platform was there. A lot of the folks who were with you then are with you now, and I'm wondering, why are you making a distinction between the two? And are we supposed to believe that there was no conversation on all of that?
Well, I make a distinction between the two because he was hired in transition, number one. Number two, Peter Venero wasn't in transition. He's going to conduct the investigation. Mamta Patel, I only met with last week for the first time, an outstanding.
About your administration, there must be
We're putting together a real, unlike Washington and Kavanaugh, a real independent investigation to answer these very questions. Please.
I'm a little bit confused about the timeline here. So you say that you were unaware of the allegations until October. Why then in June did you have a campaign lawyer respond to Ms. Brennan?
So Katie reached out, which is, I think, in the email in Kate's article. and said that she had a sensitive matter that she wanted to discuss that related to the campaign. She did not say what that matter was, by the way. So when she said the campaign, it made obvious sense to me to get someone in the legal side of the House who was associated with the campaign. I have been accused both as a candidate in transition and in government as everybody having my cell phone. Tammy and I have been reminded time and time again that just sort of doing one-off meetings with folks, for good, bad, or otherwise, creates an unevenness in the organization. And we've been reminded many times you have professionals who do this for a living. You have processes that are in place. Stick to them. And that was that was my reaction at that point. Obviously, I'm crushed now that I know what happened. Michael.
Governor, you said twice that you're glad that this has been handled appropriately since March. How has it been handled?
I said handled appropriately given the rules of the road. And I don't mean prosecutorial. I'm not a law enforcement officer. The Attorney General, have you all seen the Attorney General put something out on the law enforcement side within the past 45 minutes? Have you all seen that? So you know what he has said on that side. So I'm not commenting on that. But given the EEO rules of the road in government, within that context, it was handled appropriately. It certainly wasn't handled appropriately in the sense that she felt like she got her hearing, proper hearing in the prosecutorial sense. And I don't think the rules of the road in government are sufficient, particularly as it relates to sexual assault, which is why I'm asking Mamta, she's already begun to say, listen, how can we make these rules of the road better? The voices must be heard. We must stand with the Katies of the world, and that did not happen.
So you're saying that
Charlie.
even though your chief of staff knew about this, he didn't tell you?
The specifics of this, he did not. But listen, their cases come up all the time as it relates to employment issues. There's a confidentiality that must be adhered to, particularly in this case when I knew both parties. Charlie.
The point I think Susan made, though, don't you feel like you were let down by your staff if they had notified you ahead of time or notified you at the time? You would have had the opportunity to take action. So,
I'm saying two things. Number one,
referring to government, these processes.
But I'm saying,
the process.
you
could have taken action.
This is this particular case. First of all, I'm sick to my stomach and heartbroken over what's happened to her. But the confidentiality associated with this matters. It does matter. I think the system let us down. The system has let us down, which is why I go back even to the broader review that the Attorney General is going to pursue. We're not where we need to be, either as a country or certainly the state. I can't do anything about the country, but we could do something about New Jersey. We want this state to be the gold standard when someone is a victim of a sexual crime, that they know what to do, that they're encouraged, that they're supported, that the success rates when they raise their hand and they ask for justice to be done, that the success rates are meaningfully better than they are today. Others, please, Ryan.
You say you didn't learn the nature of the allegations until October 2nd. That seems to suggest you may have known some sort of outlines of that there was an allegation against Mr. Alvarez, or that Ms. Brennan was making some sort of an allegation. I mean, what
I did not.
you know before October 2nd?
I did not. I know what she said to me, and it was sent to the people who in the proper channels, and I believe it was, not I believe, I know it was referred to the Attorney General within 24 hours of her raising it in March. I had no idea of the nature of it until October 2nd when I was told.
You didn't ask? You didn't care to know what the nature of the allegation was?
I get these literally all the time. Now, this is one that, not in a sexual harassment.
You get cases where...
No, I get people who...
To the Attorney General's office?
I don't mean, I get people who come to me and ask for a coffee, a sit down, a conversation all the time is what I mean.
Are those usually referred to the Attorney General?
No, I don't know of any other ones that have been.
So why didn't you follow up when you learned it was referred to the Attorney General and ask what was going on?
I did on October 2nd.
Why was it, when did you learn it was referred to the Attorney General?
On October 2nd.
So you feel...
And by the way, much of the story I read about for the first time in Kate's article yesterday.
You feel comfortable that months went on where your top staff members knew about this and
I don't feel comfortable about any of this, Ryan. I don't feel comfortable, and most importantly, I don't feel comfortable. It makes me sick to my stomach that Katie went through what she went through and is going through what she's going through. Others, please. Michael.
You mentioned 3 different lines of inquiry here.
Yes.
How long are those going to take, and what sorts of changes can people expect those are going to lead to?
So, good question. These are all good questions, but Peter is putting out a statement. I don't think it's out yet. He's putting it out after I think he was waiting for me to mention that he was going to do this. And may I read to you what he's going to say? Because I don't think you all have seen this yet. Today, I was asked by the Murphy administration to undertake a systemic review of the hiring and vetting practices of the governor-elect's transition office, including the hiring and vetting of Mr. Albert J. Alvarez regarding his position in the transition office and his eventual position at the New Jersey Schools Development Authority. Within that mandate, I have been assured that I will have complete independence, this is Peter's voice, to request interviews with whomever I deem appropriate as fact witnesses, as well as access to all relevant documents. The governor spoke to me today, which we did this morning. In our conversation, he asked that after a thorough review, I provide him with a summary of hiring and vetting practices, including any items for improvement or reform. I expect to complete this review by the end of the year, if not sooner, and to report my findings to the administration. So it's going to take, this is a serious guy who's going to do a serious investigation. So read FBI, Brett Kavanaugh, 4 days over here. This is going to be the other end of the spectrum before the end of the year, so that's within a couple of months. I don't have a time frame for you on MUMTA's review or the Attorney General's broader sort of holistic, how do we make New Jersey the best, safest place for victims of sexual assault to feel like they can come forward and know that their voice will be heard. I don't have an answer on that, but we're not going to let any grass grow. This is obviously important. Nick.
Republicans were calling for legislative hearings, and it seems like that's still a possibility. Do you think that's necessary? Would you welcome that?
I think these are very meaningful steps that we're taking right now. So I would hope we don't get this is this is one of these moments where folks can either grandstand or they can call balls and strikes and try to figure out how do we make New Jersey better for victims of sexual assault. So I don't know on the process of legislation, but I just want all of us, I plead with members of both parties to be, let's stand up for Katie. Let's stand up for the likes of Katie that have happened or will happen going forward and make New Jersey a better place for those victims. I believe these steps will, A, fact-based, figure out how the heck did this hire happen. Secondly, policy-based, in the sense of how do you get a better set of rules of the road inside of government, and then sort of criminal justice, maybe legislative reform, and look at other states, what they're doing and what we can learn from them. Please.
Governor, is there a specific timing for this trip that you had to do it now? Did you consider not going on the trip?
I've not considered not going. We're going on the trip. The timing was baked, I think, 3 or 4 months ago.
Is there something on the economic cycle that's leading you to go there now as opposed to maybe
It's mostly, given the countries we're going to, it's mostly that we didn't run into their national holidays or religious holidays. We have a very packed schedule in both countries that we think will bear meaningful fruit for our economy.
Do you have an estimate of how many staff members you're bringing and what that cost may be on the taxpayers?
I don't, but Dan Bryan can get to you. It's Choose New Jersey that's funding the trip, by the way, so this is not a taxpayer paid-for trip. So that, Dan, will you get the details to that? In fact, we're going to release an itinerary, are we not? Today, yep. Dustin, so let me go back. I just want to hit folks who haven't asked yet.
Yeah, I just want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about Derek Green and whether you knew about his involvement in the jet page issue.
Yeah, I just literally saw a headline coming in here as I was preparing my remarks. So I would say this, I don't have any comment other than to say, just like we're talking about Peter Veniero's review, I hope we'll get right to that. And I used the word systemic for a reason, or he used the word systemic, pardon me, for a reason which I have now also used. It's important that we figure out how this particular hire happened, but also what the procedures and vetting and hiring processes were generally. I apologize. No, I had my eyes aimed the wrong way.
Mr. Alvarez was invited to leave governor's service. That was back in, I think, over May. I'm not sure the timeline. Wouldn't that have occasioned an incident to let you know that he was being
I did not know he was asked to leave, number one. Number two, now that I know it, part of the big reason why I want this review of policies done by MUMTA is to figure out what can be done differently, because what's going on here? That's 4 months. There are a couple of factors that are at play, I think, and I think we have to call into question all of these factors if we're going to do a real, credible, which we will, deep review of our policies. Number one, I'm told now that because the incident happened before anybody was a state employee, that prevented a certain channel of pursuit to occur. I want us to look at that. That shouldn't be a constraining factor. He works in an authority. Technically, when you work in an authority, you are guided by the governance of that authority. So as influential as the governor's office might be, you're still under the jurisdiction of that authority. That's another one where I say, you know what, that doesn't feel right to me, particularly in the context of a crime like this or alleged crime like this. So those are a couple of examples, please.
Governor, you said that you learned about the allegations and Alvarez on October 2nd, which was the same day that he resigned. Did you order that he be resigned? Did he actually resign, or did you fire him?
He resigned, and I was very relieved that he resigned on that day. Somebody who has not yet, Charlie, I'm not ignoring. I just want to make sure someone who hasn't asked a question already, please.
You mentioned that you'll be meeting with Ms. Brennan this afternoon.
No, I'll be speaking with her on the phone with Tammy.
Anything more on what you plan to speak with her about, what you plan to
Well, we were trying to connect this morning and it didn't work. I want to profess what I'm saying in many respects, what I'm saying here, my profound heartbreak. I know Tammy joins me. Tammy's been a victim. She's walked in her shoes. And by the way, justice was not done with her either, by the way. And to make sure she knows that we're on her side, that we feel awful about this. And specifically, I was going to preview this with her this morning, what the steps we're going to take, but we will then obviously review what we are taking. If you have not seen the Attorney General's statement, out of an abundance of caution, I guess is the phrase that folks use, they're now looking at this apparently again through another non-Hudson County perspective, in this case through Middlesex County. I'm happy to see that. And I want to make sure she understands that we're going to do a real independent investigation led by somebody who has got credibility, that we're going to look at our policies, even if we think on the one hand we conducted ourselves to the letter of the law. You know what? The policies, the law may not be right. And thirdly, in the bigger, more holistic sense, we want New Jersey to be a place where victims like Katie can feel like they can stand up and be heard, believed, that they're literally, this is what you do if an awful thing like this happens to you. This whole question of where do you go? What's the first thing you do? Let's make sure that we've got, whether it's through legislation, through criminal justice reform, through public awareness, outreach. We can be better. We must be better.
Governor, do you know these two people and they serve on your campaign?
Yes, I do. I know Katie more than a little bit. I know her by reputation, which is outstanding. She started doing, she's got a housing expertise. She started volunteering after we won the primary. I think it was mid to late summer of 2017, in that quiet phase when you don't want to indicate that you think you might win, but if you do win, you better darn well be ready to govern. Katie worked as a volunteer in the policy arena related to housing and did an outstanding job. She reported up to a group of committees, worked up to a gentleman named Jose Fernandez. And then she likewise was a named member of one of the transition committees, also tagging into her expertise. And then, of course, she's got the job that she has in government. Al was in my life with him, was someone who was co-responsible, I think, for outreach into the Latino community. So I just want to make sure that you've got to be up next in the second round. Maybe one more first rounder, and then we'll do a couple of second.
Who told you not to meet with Ms. Brennan after you moved and stuff?
I can't recall who told me, but that was sort of something that has been beaten into my head over the past several years, in the sense that, you know what, if you keep doing one-off meetings with people, you're going to have an uneven result when you've got professionals and processes in place. I apologize.
Sure. You expressed frustration
I think we're gonna do an independent investigation, which is commencing today, and we're gonna see what the results of that investigation are. It'll be real. I'm sorry?
You'll be open?
I have to be. I absolutely must be open. Hold on, I'm gonna come back to you, I promise. Sorry, one more first time, I apologize. Charlie, I'm not ignoring you.
Governor, what's your involvement with the investigation that we will verify? Are you going to be in the loop with what's going on? And that's-
How will I be?
Yeah.
Well, in this day and age, I have a phone, and believe me, people use it. So I'll be as involved. Sheila will be in charge of government, as she has so ably done before when I've traveled, and I will be very much in touch. But there's an independence here, right? So I'm going to be in touch to the extent to which Peter needs me and has questions that I can uniquely answer. But Peter Venero is doing the investigation. I will likely be separately in communication, and our team will be in communication, I would expect, with both MUMTA and the Attorney General on their respective. Again, remember, you got fact-based, what the heck happened here? Not just specific to this, but more systemically. Policy-based, my God, can't we get better policies? And thirdly, this whole, how do we make New Jersey a place where women like Katie can stand up and say, you know what, I know my voice will be heard and justice will be served. Please.
I know you said
I'm sorry.
it's going to be an independent investigation, and I'm sure it will be thorough. But we heard the same thing from Chris Christie after Ridgegate, and I think you personally have talked about that whitewash. Are you open to a legislative inquiry into this matter? Would you be supportive of it?
I think I already answered it. This is no whitewash, Ryan. I can't speak to Governor Christie in whatever investigations he may have done. Peter Venero is as highly qualified a lawyer, and by the way, is particularly qualified on doing investigations like this. This will be no whitewash.
And if I could just ask one more. I wonder if you feel like your aides were seeking to give you plausible deniability on this when on television.
I can't, hypotheticals I'm not going to answer. Please. Sorry, again, this is another first-time question, so.
Just a little off topic, if you could touch on the mail-in ballot law change and how that's impacting the military.
I don't have a crisp answer for you on that. Can I come back to you? Is that all right? Charlie?
This is kind of related to Ryan's question.
Ryan, will you help me there? I mean, Dan? Dan, will you help me? Remember? Okay. Please, sorry.
One of the unwritten rules and traditions of a chief of staff and a chief counsel is to keep the governor, your number one client, out of harm's way, to make sure that they are not exposed to this kind of crisis. Do you feel that they failed in their duty? And Peter Venero, who was in both those jobs, would be well-equipped to answer.
I think I have enormous confidence in both of these folks, but let's let all these processes take their course. And we'll leave it at that. Please.
Yes, you mentioned that you were only casually acquainted with Alvarez. Did you play a role in him getting the job with the school's development authority? And was it a political reward for him working on your campaign? Was he actually qualified for the job?
I had no role in his getting the job, and I would say more than casually, he worked on the campaign, so I'm not giving you an impression that I don't know this gentleman. I hope, and again, I'm going to look forward to Peter Venero's assessment of this. I hope that we called balls and strikes and we hired people who are qualified for the positions that they took. Hold on one second.
Does that mean that you didn't approve his hiring when he was hired by the transition?
You know, I don't know how many people work in state government. There's 60,000 people, I think. So I knew that he was hired, but I didn't push for it, or I wasn't necessarily informed. I think I was told after the fact he was hired. I also wasn't aware of any of this, so there was no reason for someone to say, wait a minute. Al, by the way, is a lawyer and has had a career, so it wouldn't have been a holy cow, how did that happen?
Governor, you said to me that you didn't.
It is now, by the way.
You didn't want to speculate about the motivations of your staff. Did you not ask them why they didn't tell you about this?
First of all, yeah, we've had, believe me, a lot of soul searching over the past 15 days, and or 13 days. And believe me, we've turned this thing over 1,000 times. And again, reading Kate's piece yesterday, where I and I think we learned about a lot of things that even we were not aware of and shocked the hell out of us. You've got a confidentiality process. And if you make an exception, you run the risk that somebody in my power and influence can put their finger on the scale and tip it one way or the other. And that's not right. That's not what the people of New Jersey deserve. So that part I completely understand. Matt, as someone who knew both parties, recused himself immediately. And this was overseen by the chief ethics officer in the governor's office, who's the same woman who's been in it for a couple of years. Hold on one second, ma'am. Yes, ma'am?
Whose decision was it to hire Mr. Alvarez for the SBA?
Somebody in the transition process, and we will get to the bottom of that. I don't have a crisp answer for you. Please.
Do you know why a criminal matter was sent to the ethics officer?
It was that she's a lawyer, so I assume that was the reason. Please.
Going forward, do you want to be notified?
I think that's got to be a question that we have to ask ourselves. The problem I have is, and this is for the victim as well, the problem I have is I don't want to even inadvertently influence an outcome. And I know Sheila agrees completely with me on that. We've got to have a process where everybody feels like their case will be heard, it will be fair, and nobody will have some untoward influence one way or the other. But that's got to be on the list of questions that we have to ask ourselves. I think I'm going to go in a second here, but yes, ma'am.
As you were speaking of your life, and I give her the utmost credit and respect for coming forward at this hard grant. How are you, coming to terms with this now being under your watch, so to speak?
I feel horribly. I mean, I've known it firsthand. We didn't know each other when it happened to Tammy, but I know what she's had to live with, and I feel awful. I feel awful for Katie. Nobody deserves this. She's been screaming out for help, and she didn't get it. And whether it's reviewing, as I said, the laws, the policies, who did what when, criminal justice reform, we're just not good enough. I mean, we saw this with Kavanaugh, and we're now seeing it again. And I can't do anything about the other 49 states, but Sheila and I could do something about New Jersey. And we're going to get to a better day and a better place because we have to. We have no choice. We have to be the unequivocal gold standard where New Jersey is, everyone says, you know what, New Jersey, if something awful like this happens, please God, I don't wish it ever to happen to anybody, but if it does, we're on your side. I appreciate everyone's patience. And as we know more, obviously, we will let you know. But the Peters investigation in particular is going to take a while. So I don't want you to think that we're ignoring you in any way, because we're not. But we got to take this very seriously. It is independent. It is real. It has teeth. And we have to let him do his work, and I'm very confident he will. Again, God bless Katie and all the other women and girls who have had to walk in those awful shoes. Let's get on their side. Let's make New Jersey as good as it can be for those awful circumstances. Thank you all.